Good afternoon and welcome to everybody on today's call to our webinar on the latest developments on the Asian paper and pulp market. My name is Raluca Cercel. I'm a CW associate, and today I'll be joined by Joao, an analyst with CW, as well as our lead analyst on the paper and pulp markets. The focus of today's meeting is to bring you an update that's both qualitative and quantitative into the impact of trade regulations on the Asian market in terms of supply, demand, and of course, prices. I will start with a couple of introductory notes on our company and on our, scope on the paper and pulp market. We'll continue with a brief macroeconomic overview specific for the Asian market, and then we'll pass to João, who will present, let's say, the meat of the actual presentation today. So as many of you know, we are my apologies, 1 second. Just 1 second. I'm sorry, it seems we have a bit of a technical issue. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, it seems that we're not able to progress here. One second, and again, apologies for everybody. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Just 1 second here, and we'll be back in business, I hope. And here we are. Sorry again. So, as I was saying, as many of you probably know, CW is a boutique advisory group based in the United States with a specific focus on providing market intelligence in the shape of research products or consulting and advisory projects to clients from many and varied industries, all of which are listed here on this page. We operate through 3 big branches, and I'll start with our advisory one. Through this branch, we have been lucky to work with clients from around the world, from various walks of life, and we'll give you just a few examples of types of clients, from cement equipment manufacturers, lime and steel manufacturers, graphite manufacturers, fuel suppliers, investment banks, and many, many others. Such projects span from sourcing, consulting to strategy formulation, and pretty much everything in between. Moving on to our research branch, our focus here is to provide analyze data in the shape of actionable information, which is meant to help business professionals like yourself make highly informed business decisions. Relevant to today's topic, and part of the industry studies that are more recent to us, the quicklime report and the ground and precipitated calcium carbonate global forecast report, which we are releasing very, very soon. Both of them contain a bottom-up approach in terms of analyzing the market, and much of it comes from the paper and pulp industry, which is a main consumer of both quicklime and ground and precipitated calcium carbonate. Now, to move on, our media branch, through it, we keep our subscribers up to date with the latest news from the industry, including the paper and pulp industry. We have a dedicated platform for the industry, and I'll explain more on that in a bit. We also have, of course, platforms for other industries, but for today's meeting, I'll keep my focus on this particular platform. Our IPP platform, as I said, is part of our industry news platforms and is meant to keep subscribers up to date to the industry by bringing forward not only the most important news in all of the geographies, but also the, let's say, smaller news that are not easy to find for everybody. Apart from pieces of news that come in daily newsletters, we also track important market data for the main producers and consumers of paper and pulp in the shape of production, consumption, trade, and prices. And this information comes to our subscribers on a weekly basis and contains monthly reporting on the data I just mentioned. So how do we do this? Again, just a brief overview here. We have actually quite close contact with key stakeholders in the industry, largely because we know the industry quite well. And this often allows us to pick their brain on what the market is doing. And of course, that gives us a leverage that other companies like ourselves who only do secondary research do not have. If we look specifically at our news platform, very interesting here that the editorial control actually lies with the analyst team, in this case specifically with João. So he is not only looking at, say, quantitative data, but by having control over the editorial content, we keep a close eye on qualitative information as well, as you will see today. We also have a quite big internal database of paper and pulp market information. And of course, again, that allows us to bring forward today's webinar. Now, before I ask João to take over and to walk you through the main presentation today, we'll take just a few minutes to run you through a short macroeconomic update of the Asian region. Now, overall, we're looking at resilient growth. If we're looking now in 2018, specifically in the first half of the year, but we're definitely seeing some diverging trends for the countries we're looking at. The chart on this page, the bubble chart you see here on the x-axis, we're looking at the CAGR of GDP per capita in the 2013-2023 period. And for the same period, on the y-axis, we're looking at the population growth, whereas the size of the bubble represents the actual population. The X and the little circle tagged with World and Asia Pacific represent, say, the global and the Asia Pacific average positioning on this plotting. Now, to go and to look specifically at some markets, and I'll start off with China. Quite a great deal of impact from the current trade and tariff situation, in spite of the truce that the two governments, the US and the Chinese government, have agreed on. The trade war has caused some havoc already. And it is underlying China's rising cost of labor at a time when the job market is severely under pressure. There are several companies now that are considering leaving China if a trade war materializes to have more impactful consequences, and that could potentially put at risk 4.4 million jobs in China, which of course would have an immediate impact on the GDP per capita and on the population growth in the country. Now, if the situation does not materialize for whatever reason in terms of the trade war, China's workers are becoming better and better paid, and most likely that will mean that China will no longer be the heaven of low wages for manufacturing companies as it has been in the future. And that, of course, people's purchasing power will increase, and that will have a large impact on the topic we're looking at today, which is paper and pulp consumption and production. Looking at India, definitely a better looking situation than in the case of China. The economy actually has been growing faster than the Chinese economy in this first half of the year. And this growth will likely be even more supported in the coming years by a looser fiscal policy that comes ahead of the general elections that will happen next year. Of course, all based on the Prime Minister's promise of improving the economy, something that we already have seen happening, and likely close to the general election, there will be a bigger boost to make that effect visible to, all strands of the population. India's economy is also benefiting from other items, specifically easing of pressures coming from the oil prices, which saw a bit of a drop in October, and also benefiting from the strengthening of the rupee. To look at Pakistan, there are some large risks lying ahead of Pakistan's economy. The country is troubled by a large trade deficit and debt deficit. And on the debt deficit side, Pakistan has opened its doors to large infrastructure spending, specifically this year and in the previous year. And that actually allowed its deficit to soar and basically pushed the Pakistani economy in the arms of the IMF. And to give you a few stats, the rupee dropped by nearly 18% year to date in the first 11 months of 2018 compared to the same period of 2017. Overall, indicators have been trending negatively. The inflation in the country increased to 7% in November. That's about 1.5 percentage points more than in August 2018. And that definitely is pointing to a decline in purchasing power. This is all pretty much happening in the first 100 days of the new PTI government, definitely not aiding in curbing in a positive way the Pakistani confidence in the government or their purchasing power. And that being said, and I hope I gave you, let's say, informative context of the macroeconomic situation in these three important markets. João will continue speaking specifically on these markets as well as on Indonesia. And that being said, I'll pass to João and he will take you forward from here.
So, all right, thanks, Raluca. Hello, guys. Thanks for joining our webinar. We hope you find our insights helpful. So let's get straight to it. Regarding trade regulations, so wait a little bit, we have some technical problems. Bear with us a little bit. Okay, so as I was saying, regarding trade regulations, in this chapter, we're gonna cover not only the current supply-demand situation in terms of not only China, India, Indonesia, and Pakistan. We're gonna obviously also speak about the recent trade regulation changes that happened in Pakistan and China and the effects that they produced. So first, regarding the supply-demand balance situation, China, and as you can see by the graph, China and Indonesia are two of the main net exporters of paper and paperboard in this region. As we all know, China still is the #1 producer of paper and paperboard in the world, despite of estimates point to a slight decrease on the paper and paperboard output in this country, mainly due to the recent trade regulation changes. And I'm going to cover this up ahead. Regarding Indonesia, Indonesia's paper and paperboard output is higher than its consumption, mainly due to incentives implemented by the government on paper manufacturers. For paper manufacturers, these incentives were implemented mainly in the early 90s. And the other reason for Indonesia's paper output to be so high is also the fact that Indonesia is one of the largest forest covers in the world. Regarding India and Pakistan, these are two of the main net importers of paper and paperboard in this region. India's major paper producing problems are not only high energy costs, but also on average inefficient paper machines. Regarding Pakistan, the major paper producing problem in this country is definitely the lack of availability of raw materials. To be more specific, the lack of availability of woods, mainly due to the forest cover in Pakistan to only represent around 4.8% of the total territory. Pakistani paper manufacturers that produce paper through wood pulp have their production very limited because of this reason. Now, regarding the trade regulations and their impacts, in in 2018, 1st January of 2018, China implemented a ban on waste products. This ban comprises most of waste paper grades, excluding waste paper grades with high purity waste paper grades. This ban had several effects not only on the Chinese paper industry but also in the paper industry worldwide. This, for example, just 1 second. Considerable decrease of waste paper imports in China. So because this was a ban on waste paper imports, naturally this number decreased in terms of volumes. Also, because China is such a relevant market to waste paper, if the demand, so because China comprises a big part of the waste paper demand globally, with this ban, this demand will decrease, and when the demand decreased, the price also decreased. Besides this price variation, other commodities price rated as well, such as wood pulp, as we're gonna show you up ahead. Because prices variated internationally, big and major players in the paper market had to adapt to this, and they changed the way they produced paper and pulp. For example, we have, for example, Indian and Indonesian paper manufacturers changed the way they produce paper in terms of, because of the price of waste paper to have decreased so much, they started to import lots of these commodities instead of producing wood pulp. So they changed the way they produced their paper. Now, regarding Pakistan, in 2017, in 1st January of 2017, Pakistani government decided to reduce import tariffs on waste products from 25 to 20%. These include most paper and paper products. The main intent behind this decision was to slow down the price increase of most paper and products, of most paper and paper products. Although this was the main objective of the government, this wasn't achieved as the price continued to grow because of other factors that we're going to mention also up ahead. Despite of this, a decrease on the import of the price of paper and paper products was witnessed, as well as a natural increase in paper and paperboard imports volumes. Having a closer look at China's trade regulation changes over the last 10 years. There always were restrictions on the import of waste products in China, mainly for the less purity grade waste products. But with Operation Green Fence that took action in 2013, the government decided to implement these restrictions much heavier and to have a tighter control on the border for the inflow of waste products. In 2017, these restrictions got even heavier and the control got even tighter, and exporters to China, exporters of waste products to China, experienced some difficulties in getting the imports license, and also experienced very high waiting times for cargoes on ports. Finally, in 2018, as I said previously, it was implemented the ban on imports of waste paper. Now, this ban, as I said, had implications in terms of the prices of commodities worldwide, mainly in wood pulp prices and waste paper prices, as we can see in this graph. In 2018, it is estimated waste paper producer price to decrease by around 30%. The main reason for this is because, as I said before, China comprises a big part of demand for waste paper, and this demand decreased a lot due to the ban, so the price decreased a lot. Regarding the wood pulp, because many Chinese paper manufacturers used to produce their paper by importing waste paper. Now that they can do that, they have to produce it in some other way. And most of them are turning to producing paper through wood pulp. So demand globally for wood pulp is increasing a lot, and thus the price increased, or it is estimated to increase in 2018 by 20.1%. Finally, having a closer look at the recent trade regulation changes in Pakistan. In 2007, the Pakistani government, with the intent to protect its paper industry and to raise the national paper output, the government introduced a 25% import tariff on most paper and paperboard products. And despite of a positive outcome in terms of paper output, it also had a negative outcome in the perspective of consumers, of course, because retail prices for most paper and paperboard products severely increased, since Pakistan is a mainly net importer country. With some pressures from several consumer associations, in 2017, the government decided to reduce this tariff from 25 to 20%, with the main intent to slow down the price increase for retail paper products. But as we can see by this graph on the right side, in 2017, the retail price for printing paper still increased by 0.9% and even more by 2018. Main reasons for this is, despite of this tariff reduction, there were three factors that completely offset this reduction, which were the repeated valorization, the increase of consumption of paper and paperboard products, and also the country inflation due to its huge debt. So, to wrap this small discussion, here we present our main takeaways. Pakistan tariff import reduction was not enough to produce a relevant effect in paper products' final price to Pakistani consumers. So, as I say, despite of the reduction of the Pakistani government from 25 to 20% on import tariffs, this was not enough to offset other factors, mainly the consumption. Pakistani population is rapidly increasing over the last few years, and this was sufficient to offset the small tariff reduction of 25 to 20% by the government. Regarding China's waste import ban, as I also said, these have big implications in terms of two commodity prices, waste paper and wood pulp. Big players reacted to it. They changed the way they produce, and in some cases, mainly in India and Indonesia, big players started to producing paper through the import of waste paper. Because of these reasons, these two countries started to see a big inflow of waste paper products to their territory. And because of that reason, the governments are starting to worry for their environmental situation. And there are rumors that these two countries may eventually follow the same path as China, and to also implement bans on waste products. So this was it. We hope you enjoyed our webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We will happily answer to it. You have here in your screens our two email addresses. We also want to let you know that it's gonna be available to you, this webinar in terms of recording and also in terms of PDF. So we hope you enjoyed our webinar, and that's it from us. Please have a good day. Goodbye.